So what are you doing here?
A couple of things. Taking a break from my wife, forgetting my son's birthday, and getting paid $2 million to endorse a whiskey when I could be doing a play somewhere.
Okay, retro go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen. It's a show where we talk about movies and specifically talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, aka TV's Travis. This is episode number 270. And our movie this week is 2003's Lost in Translation. And here to talk with me about it, it's the movie psycho, MP. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Travis. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Okay, so I always like to start with my guest's history with the movie, and you brought this movie to me. So, what's your history with Lost in Translation?
It's one of those movies I know, and I gotta give you credit, give the host here credit for the patience of Job that he had with me. I don't know how many attempts he made to give to me. I'm terrible at all this, but anyway, well, you had said find a movie that you haven't seen, which I'm obviously going to choose something decent to watch. There's a lot of crap I haven't seen, but
Mhm.
let's go with something good. So I just started pulling up all these lists of like the top whatever 25 lists or 50 of the movies you must see before you die and all that. And I was like, okay, I've seen that one, I've seen that one, I've seen that one, I've seen that one. But Lost in Translation kept popping up, and I was like, I'm a big Bill Murray fan, and that is a movie that I had never watched, and he got nominated for an Oscar for it. I felt bad about myself for not have seen the movie, and I
Right.
was like, well, this is the perfect opportunity to sit down and watch this movie, and then have a nice conversation about it.
Absolutely. Kind of the same for me. I hadn't seen it, and it was a movie that I knew of, um, just because of like it came out right in that era where I was out of high school, figuring out college, kind of trying to figure myself out, and
Right.
I really wanted to be in film. I wanted to be a filmmaker, and this was one of those that people talked about a lot. I just didn't see it. I didn't see it in the theaters, and then I never got around to watching it, and it just sort of it was there, but I never did anything with it. So this was a great excuse to finally fix that hole and watch this. So I went into it knowing Bill Murray and Scarlett Johannson were in it, and I knew it was directed by Sofia Coppola. That's all I knew.
Yeah, that's about where I was, and that the mystery of what he said is the end. I knew the last scene of the movie because I've seen it in other things about what did Bill Murray whisper to
Yeah,
her. But other than that, yeah, I had no idea what I was coming into, and it's we'll get into it. But it was a movie that hit me at a point in my life where I was like, oh God, that's really hitting close to home in some areas.
so this is the story of um, Bob Harris, an aging actor played by Bill Murray, which he was his career didn't really ever disappear, but there were definitely like peaks and valleys in his career
Right,
over the years. And
right.
this he was still well known, but he wasn't the Bill Murray of the '80s at this point. So probably not too difficult for him to figure out where this role comes from. But he's um, he's in Japan doing a whiskey ad,
Yeah.
and just kind of in this period in his life where he doesn't really know what he's doing anymore. And I liked that aspect of it. He's not like a he's not necessarily searching for the fame of when he was younger, but he just doesn't know what he's doing anymore. He's like, I'm here because it makes money for my family. But
Right, right. He's just going through the movie star motions at this point.
yeah, yep. Um, you know, his relationship with his wife isn't great, but it's interesting, right? Because like it's definitely not a great relationship, and we get bits and pieces of that through his conversations with her on the phone, but it's never
Yes.
contentious. He's not looking to leave her necessarily.
Right. It's
He's
almost like they're at a point in their marriage where it's almost like a job in and of itself. They just get
yes,
up and go to work, and then plus he's learning now at his midlife crisis that maybe he's not quite as needed as he thought he was in that family situation.
yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's like a job for them to be in this anymore. And like, there's a moment where she she says to him on the phone something about like the kids are getting used to you not being around.
Right.
I was like, oh, like that. That
Yes.
just, you can see Bill Murray's performance is so good in this because you can see right there just how much that really hurts him.
Yeah. I like
Um,
the call. It's kind of, I guess, towards the end, maybe, where he had been out with Scarlett. I should say Charlotte is her name. I'll mess that up through the whole thing. I'll just call them by their movie star names.
sure.
But anyway, where he calls his wife after they've been out, and he's so excited about this experience that he's trying to share it with her, and
Hmm.
she just isn't giving him anything. And you could just, again, that look that he has is just so defeated
Yeah.
from that call because he wants her to be invested in that or interested in that, and all she's doing is just throwing it back at him like, well, it must be nice to be doing that while I'm dealing with the kids.
Right. And look, I love Bill Murray in just about everything he's in. Whether he's playing, the hyper realistic version of himself
Right.
or not. Like, there's a charisma he's got. And I know he can be, there have been rumors and things that he's difficult on set sometimes. I kind of get
Yes.
that. Some of your really um, quirky, I think is the word that I would use, people can be that way. They're difficult to, I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis was always
I can
difficult on
imagine.
sets. So,
I can imagine.
but I will say, like, this was one I saw some interviews with Scarlett Johannson talking about working with him and how well it went. Even though she was somewhat intimidated by it, she was 17 making this movie.
I
She
know
said,
it. Oh, Travis, I felt I didn't realize that until afterwards when I was doing a little research on it. And when that came up, I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel right now. Especially when you have that opening shot of the movie. It's just like, oh God, no, I feel bad about myself.
which, eh, so okay, we'll get to that here in a second. But Scarlett Johansson is Charlotte. She's only been married a couple of years, but she's with her husband, played by Giovanni Ribisi. He's a photographer. They're in Tokyo for him to be at work, and she just kind of tags along. And so she's there, and also in a weird point in her life, trying to figure out what she wants, but a different stage of that, right? She's in the
Yeah.
where I was at the age that this movie came out, of out of high school, out of college, maybe, or in college, trying to figure out what you want to be moving forward. Bob is like, he's done a whole lot and he's just trying to figure out what to do next.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
so that opening shot, which is just a long opening credit shot of her butt in a pair of underwear, apparently Sofia Coppola actually did the same, like did a take of it in the same underwear to kind of help her relax and be comfortable with doing
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, when I found out, I was like, ooh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But to be fair, in the movie, she seems like she's what, in her early mid 20s. I know it just doesn't
yeah,
make it sound a whole lot better, but to be fair,
yeah, she's supposed to be like freshly out of
'cause she,
Yale, right?
yeah.
So
So
my guess is like
that's why I was
22.
shocked when it said she was 17. I was like, damn, she does not even. Which I credit to her acting skills. She does not come off as a 17-year-old at all.
No,
At least not when to relate it to when I was 17.
right. Yeah, no, her performance is amazing. So this is one of those movies that relies on the two leads. They're basically two characters in this movie. We get Giovanni Ribisi as John. He's great. I like him a lot. He's not in it very much. He's just
Right.
sort of, he's there to be the foil for Charlotte, the character that she deals with. But then he leaves and leaves her there in Tokyo. And then you have Anna Faris as Kelly, the actor that John knows and is also sort of just happens to be there promoting a movie at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, but that's really it. Like, there's some other people they run into, but the musician, the singer in the lounge, and
Yes,
like
and then
Charlotte's
Charlotte's
friend.
friends,
Yeah,
Charlie Brown. I
yeah,
think that was one of them.
yep. But the movie is really about Bob and Charlotte, and
Yeah.
those two need to be those two performances need to carry it, but they also need to have the chemistry on screen, and I think they did. And
Yes, they did.
Bill Murray's 52, I think, when they made this. But what's interesting about it is a romance movie. It's a movie about a relationship, and it should, like, in retrospect, thinking about it, it should feel even more creepy, but it never goes that route because the way the relationship between the two of them is, it's just sort of like there is romantic tension between the two of them, but it never gets to the point of anybody. There's no deception involved,
Yes.
which I thought was really like usually in a romance or romantic comedy movie, you get that like meet cute moment where they bump into each other and they have that moment, and then from there things go, and maybe somebody doesn't let on that they're married or whatever. Um, they don't even have dialogue together for half an hour into the movie.
Right. And then even when they do, when they first meet, they're very open about where they are, what they're doing, and where they are in their life. Like he tells her he's married, I think, and she's tells him that she's married. You know, they know where they are in the world. Instead of, like you said, they're not hiding things, or one of them's just trying to weasel their way into their life or anything like that. And it's a very
Yeah,
innocent, for most of it. It's like you said, there is that sort of romantic tension, for lack of a better word, but it's mostly an innocent type of relationship through most of the movie that never really crosses that line.
yeah, yeah. It never gets. It's never like super sexual. It's there's intimacy, but it's like emotional intimacy. They're both looking
Yeah.
for that with someone.
Yes.
You know, Bob doesn't have that with his wife anymore. They used to, and that's one of the things he's lamenting. And I loved his moment where he talks about how having kids changes your entire life, but it also is incredibly frightening and scary, and nothing is ever the same. And he's going through that. He's got young kids at home, and his wife is focused on that. And he just doesn't quite know how to reconcile that. And then you've got Charlotte, who her life has changed in different ways, and she's not sure because she got married obviously very young. If she's supposed to be a
Right.
fresh college graduate, let's say 22. Okay.
It's yeah. And they've been
Um,
married a couple of years, right?
yeah. So she's married at 20 to a photographer. Now all of a sudden they're halfway around the world, and there's that moment where she calls her mom early in the
Yes.
movie. Devastating. Like phone calls in this movie were just just heart
Yeah.
wrenching. Um, but she was in a temple, I think, right? She was stumbled upon a temple while she was wandering around,
Right.
and she calls her mom, and the thing she says to her is like, I found this temple today and I didn't feel anything. She's trying to figure, like, she should be, this is all the hallmarks of like, you're in a different country, you're getting, this grand adventure, you're experiencing and seeing all these new things, and it's not connecting with her at all. There's just nothing
No.
going on. um and she doesn't
And
know how to
again,
feel
she's
about that.
reaching out to somebody for help, like much like that Bill Murray call. She's reaching out for something that she's just not getting from that person on the other end of the phone.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like, there's just nothing there, and so she doesn't. So here she is alone and can't sleep. Bill Murray, Bob Harris is alone; he can't sleep. Um, you've got them setting this in Tokyo makes a lot of sense because if you put this in an American town, there's familiarity there, and it's
Right.
harder for them to. They both have to feel that out of place, fish out of water thing
Exactly.
to be able to make their connection, and that works.
And they get reminded of it constantly throughout this movie.
Yeah, and
Some of the
it's
best comedic moments are when Bill Murray's having to just riff off all that stuff.
I okay, all right. I just loved that. I loved the photo shoot where he's in the tux.
Oh my god, I laughed through that whole thing. And he's like, Roger Moore, Roger Moore.
That the video, the film shoot for the commercial was great because like the director is going off and talking and the interpreter says like four words. He's like, "Is that it? Really? It
Yeah, man, it
feels like
seems
he
like
said
he's
more than
saying
that."
more than that.
Absolutely love that. And Bill Murray's such a good improv comedian, and he's so able to feel natural in a situation like that. Um,
Yes.
that it worked. But then even like later on when they so they meet, he sees her first in the elevator because they happen to be at the same hotel.
Right.
Um, and they kind of have a quick moment where they see each other, but it doesn't register for her. And then she gets off the elevator because she's just in her own world right now, and she's just trying to process everything. Um, And then when they do finally like meet, it's at the bar. But then later on, they go out with some of her friends, and it's like the same thing. They're dealing with these cultural differences, but they're also having a really good time and just experiencing the moment together. Um,
Yes.
and it is innocent and but also very intimate. It's very there's a closeness that they get that you kind of can only get in the moment like that.
Right, where they're
Um,
connecting on that level of knowing where they're at in this country that they're, like you said, the fish out of the water, so they're both connecting on that. Plus, as you said, the difference they're kind of at the same stage, just different places in their lives at that stage of their lives, if that
yeah.
makes any kind of sense.
No, it's really the way to explain it. They're both in the same point. They're they're at the same crossroads, but different points on the map, right?
Yeah.
But they're dealing with the same kind of thing, and they're just trying to sort it out and looking for any kind of a connection, and they're making that connection in a way that is unique to this situation, and they're sort of figuring out as it goes along that it's only going to be in this situation. Like it is
Right. That's sort of the uh the downside of the movie is that these characters are in this where they are connecting and they're coming back to life, but it's also going to be for this very short window of time and then it's over.
but it's kind of what they both need. And I also like the did you ever see Harold and Maude?
I did, but that was a long, long time
Okay.
ago.
I I vaguely remember that movie, and it feels like there's something I don't want to say it's the same, but there might be some similarities there of like just different stages of your life and going through this kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um, because you've got, Charlotte is trying to figure it out and she hasn't been through a whole lot yet. And Bob has, and Bob's giving her really good advice and at the same time being like, you're going to be okay. Like it will
yes.
be
You're
fine,
not
but
hopeless.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, he's not hopeless and nihilistic about anything, but he's also realistic about it. Like it's hard and it
Yeah,
can get
yeah, he
easier.
doesn't sugarcoat it at all, no.
Hmm.
Or give
And
empty platitudes about things. He's just like, "Look, this is it." That's why when he says that having a kid is scary, she's like, "That's the first time anybody's ever told me that."
right, and that was a really great line. That was a really great moment. That whole moment on the they've neither one of them can sleep. That's a big theme throughout it. Is just this insomnia and this inability to sleep. So they kind of connect there. But it's cool because they don't just immediately like even when they have their first meeting at the bar and they hit it off and they at least they're flirty without it being like I don't think too much.
Yes.
And then
It's
they
very
run into
playful,
each other.
very playful.
Yes. And then when they run into each other, he's coming out or she's coming out of the pool as he's heading in the middle of the night. And it's kind of the same thing. It's that sort of awkward, slightly flirtatious moment, but it never steps over that line. Almost like she might be willing to, but he isn't quite like he's like, this the no. Um, but I'm enjoying the attention of somebody and somebody that I can connect with.
Yes.
Um, and so then it expands when she says, "Hey, I'm going out with some friends. Do you want to come along?" And he goes, and they do have a really great time, and they really do enjoy these connecting moments. But at the end of it, he sets her in her bed. She's asleep, and he just tucks her in and
And
heads
leaves.
off.
Yes.
And he goes back to his room to call his wife to tell her about this great night she had, which you brought up earlier.
Yeah,
Um,
and she just does not yeah, like I said, mostly she gives back, "Well, it must be nice while I'm here doing all this that you get to do that." And that's
right?
not really what he was trying to say. He was trying to say, "Here, share this with me."
Yeah.
And she just they're probably at that point in their marriage where this is just not there.
Hmm.
She doesn't care. She's got other things that she's dealing with.
Yeah, like younger version of her is probably all about hearing about this great experience that he had. Meanwhile, but this version of her now is just like pick a carpet, you know.
Well, I think he said, doesn't he say at a point where when they first got married that she would come to the movie shoots with him and stuff like that?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then when their kids came, then she just stopped.
yeah, yeah. It just completely changed everything. in their relationship and in his life, and that's what he's really struggling with, is like how he wants to get those feelings back, but he doesn't know that that's what he wants again. He just doesn't know, and he's trying to figure it out, and he's getting nothing from his wife. And too, like, putting him in Tokyo means that their conversations are always tough because the time change.
Yes, and the phone keeps cutting out when
Yep.
he's on his cell phone because this was what flip phone era, so the
Uh-huh.
service wasn't that great.
Right. Um yeah, it's a really, it's an interesting movie because not much happens, yet a lot happens at the same time. It's one of those kinds of movies, right? There
Yes,
isn't
yeah,
like there isn't this huge intricate plot. There isn't a bunch. There's no, like, the stakes are just for these two people, but yet for these two people, there's a whole hell of a lot going on.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. You could look at it that way and be like, well, nothing really happens, and these characters end the movie almost in the same spot where they started the movie. But like you said, so much has happened emotionally between the two and for each character that they've made enough changes and growths, and it's interesting enough to see these two actors working together that I mean, I enjoyed it. There were parts of it where I was like, okay, let's get moving a little bit. But for
sure.
the most part, you're so invested in what's happening. And again, at this point in my life, there were things I could relate to in this movie where I was like, oh, let's see how this is going to play out for Bill Murray.
So, what was it that you really related to in this? Like, what were some of
Well,
the things that touched you in
oh,
this one?
geez. Well, I don't want to go too personal, but I am
Sure.
divorced, and my kids are now they're older, they're grown now, and they're out on their own. So you do get this feeling of like when she says, "Well, the kids they miss you, but they're getting used to it," and you feel like you're not needed in that capacity anymore. So it's I was talking to someone recently about this. You sort of have this moment in life where you're all about your kids or your family or whatever, and then suddenly you're like, okay, well, that's gone into a different direction as it's supposed to. Kids are supposed to grow up and move on.
Mhm.
Now what am I supposed to do? I'm not really needed. Like I'm not needed to be there to watch all these things. So, there's that, and there's also that emotion that you're looking for with someone, that connection, because you can have a connection with someone and just really be interested in this person enough to want to pursue something, but know that it's just not going to work out that way.
Mhm. Yeah.
Not so much a doomed relationship, but just knowing, all right, as much as I'd like and I'm really connecting with this person, it's not going to end the way I want it to. But let me get what I can out of it to learn and grow from.
Yeah. I think also it's interesting to me because I'm very much of the mindset that, like, you can have an intimate relationship with somebody, and it's intimacy does not equate to sexual. That's a
Right.
form of intimacy, but there is emotional connection, there is mental connection, and we need those kinds of connections as people. Um, those can be interwoven, they can coincide, but they don't have to. And even if there is some of that flirtatiousness going on, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to lead to something um, sexual at all. And that's one of the things I think this movie did really well, especially given the age difference between the characters, um, and kind of how it was going. Because again, it would be really easy for either character to fall victim to that and fall into that
Right.
trap.
Right.
Um,
And like you said with the intimacy, that scene where they're actually in bed together and they're just talking, that's probably more intimate than any kind of sex scene they would have had with each other because they're really getting into some deep stuff and like you said, he's giving her this advice and stuff, and you can see that that's really having a profound effect on both of them.
mhm. Yeah, it really is because he needs to have that connection with her, and he needs to sort of, there's a part of him that is imparting wisdom that he has gathered over the years, but also getting to have somebody share this experience with him. And then at the same time, she's getting information that no one's ever told her before. And there's a thing he talks about, like, when you find yourself and you figure out what you want, then it makes you don't get upset about things the way that you would. And I thought
Right.
that was really interesting because that's something that took me a while to get to in my life as well.
A lot of us, it takes a while to get to that.
But it's true. Once you can kind of figure out who you are and what it is you're looking for out of life, a lot of the extraneous things that could really annoy you and drive you up a wall just sort of don't matter anymore
Yeah.
because you figure out that they're not important like you thought that they
Yeah.
were.
Exactly.
Um, so that I like that. And then on top of like all this emotional stuff, the visuals of this are great. I love the way this looks.
Yeah, I love the whole thing where they're riding through Tokyo. Both of them, whenever they're alone riding through Tokyo, just the way they look out and how almost dreamlike this world is that they're
Hmm.
in. And then whenever Scarlett's out on her own, just exploring things, yeah, it's almost like postcards from Japan for the
It
things that
really,
she's
yeah.
exploring.
No, it is. It again, this is where setting it in Tokyo works for the dreamlike situation because it's such a different place than anywhere in the US. I mean, you can have an ancient temple next to a bank of neon signs.
Right, right.
Um, and on top of that, you've got, you know, young blonde Scarlett Johannson walking around in Tokyo. So she's going to stand out. And Bill
Yes.
Murray is, 6 inches taller
Taller
than
than,
everybody.
yeah.
Um, so that works. And like that dreamlike is a great way to put it, right? They did some work with, I know Sofia Coppola said that she went around Tokyo. Like she loved Tokyo. She spent time there in her 20s, and that this was somewhat of a love letter to Tokyo for her making this. And she went around and took like just photos upon photos and used those as storyboarding kind of ideas. She had like a whole book of photography. And Lance Acord, or Accord, probably, is the director of photography. And what they did, I loved a lot of the like handheld look of everything and those really shallow depth of field. So like you're talking about sort of that dream idea
Right.
where you see, Charlotte riding around in a taxi and the background is all out of focus because we see her and the
Yes.
window and
Yes.
everything else. Or
Just that sort of cloud that follows her around in the city.
yeah, that neon cloud. Or I loved all the shots looking out the hotel windows, whether she's
And the way the
sitting
lights
there.
would change from red to green and all that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, just it's just gorgeous looking.
And
And then you get
chaotic too. Whenever they go into the like when she was in the arcade and all that stuff's going on, or even when they're going out at night on that, it was just chaos and then moments of intimacy or the closeness where they're doing the karaoke and stuff, and then there's chaos, and then there's a guy chasing them with some kind of BB gun or something. I
yeah.
don't know what that was all about.
Those
I'm like, what is he shooting at them?
I one of my notes was like, what is that he's firing at them? Because it was like a BB gun, but it had tracers. It was the
Yes,
craziest
it
thing I've
was
ever seen.
scary looking, but nothing was getting shot, but it was
No,
making a noise. I don't know.
that was
Airsoft gun or I don't know what it was.
yeah. I want to find out what that is because that thing was cool. Yeah, I did read that they did all of the nighttime exteriors. They didn't use any extra artificial light. They just used the light that was available on the street when they were shooting it, um,
Okay.
which is
And then they
great.
did a few guerrilla style stuff on the street as well, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah. Was it the subway stuff? I think they didn't have
Yeah,
permits for,
yeah.
and I want to say the big um, interchange crossing.
Yes, that
Uh,
one. Yeah, that's
I
the one
can't think of it.
I think I read about. Yeah.
Somebody who knows more about Tokyo will know what crossing it is. Shiba, I think, or something like that. I don't remember, and I'm really bad with that. But um, yeah, doing all of that like real handheld guerrilla style, almost documentary style, I think added to it because it gives us the feeling of being in that moment with them, walking
Yes.
down the street in these crowded
Yes.
streets. Or, um, but then when
Because
she was in like
we
the
get that fish out of water with them
yeah,
because as Americans we we just think we're it.
mm-hmm,
So when you see something, you're like, well, that's not how it works here. And now
mm-hmm.
you can imagine, God, what would must be like if you're all alone walking through all of that.
Yeah, and the isolation of things is really important. Like, because Bob is there, Bob is isolated because he's there alone. He's traveled alone. The only people he knows when he gets there are, the press people that are handling
Right.
him and moving him around. Um, and like, I love that first scene with him where he comes up and they're giving him gifts and shaking his hand and all that. And he's just,
Yeah,
you can
right.
tell, like, he is just tired. He just wants to
He
go to the
just wants to
hotel
go to
room.
bed.
He's got to carry all his gifts that they're bringing him.
Yeah,
I love that.
they keep giving, and then he has the one from what is it? They give him a fax from his wife about something.
Yeah.
You missed your son's birthday, and he's like, "Ah, jeez, I just want to go to bed."
But yeah, like he's traveling by himself, and then conversely, Charlotte is there with her husband, but she's basically alone because all of the scenes with him are he barely acknowledges her at times. He's
Right,
so wrapped up in
right.
his own thing. And
And I like that though in the movie that they don't make him out to be like this jerk. It'd be so easy to make him, just be mean to Charlotte or just be a complete asshole. So where you automatically buy into her wanting to be in some sort of quote unquote relationship with
mhm,
Bob. Instead, he seems like I say he loves her, or he's just like you said, he's just not. She's just there while he's doing his work. That's all that she is to him, just a person that's there. The
yeah,
only time I wouldn't say it's him being mean to her, but he does seem to pick out her when she does something he doesn't like the smoking. After she's been walking around in her panties right next to him, and the first thing he notices is that she's been smoking. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
It's exactly where I'm going. Is like he doesn't notice her until it's something negative to talk about. Like
Yes.
the scene where they're coming through the lobby and they're kind of arm in arm, and then all of a sudden Kelly shows up, Anna Faris, and he immediately starts talking to her, and there's more chemistry going on between him and Kelly than there is with him and Charlotte,
Right.
even to the point where he tries to put his arm back around her after not introducing her for quite a while, and then finally introducing her and putting her arm around her, and she's just
Exactly.
kind
That
of
was the part I thought about. I was like, geez, he hasn't even said this is my wife, Charlotte.
right. Um, but just all this kind of stuff, and yeah, he's just so wrapped up in what he's doing, and he doesn't notice her. He doesn't notice
Right.
her until she says something, and then he's like, "Why do you got to be so negative and point out how dumb
Yeah.
people are?"
Yes.
And
Yeah, if he did that. And that comes across with her character is that she's we all know the phrase old soul. That's just how she
yep,
struck me because whenever she was around the young people her age with her husband and like you said, Anna Faris's character, and there was another was it Anna Faris's somebody, I don't know. They were all sitting at dinner and she's just not a part of that group.
hmm not at all. And they even filmed that. I love the way they shot that. Where number one, the fourth guy, the fourth member of that table, we get one shot that actually shows him. The rest of the time, he's just sort of there because he's not important.
Right. You see his
The
back.
important, yeah, the important thing is the other three, and then the way that they're staged. Charlotte is always kind of off on her own. She's
Right.
separate from them, and they're looking at each other. They're not engaging with her. So it's just like visually creating that isolation.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, it's just
Which
all
makes
of that.
sense why she would connect with the Bob character because, like I said, I feel like she's an old soul, so
hmm
they can connect easier. Plus, they both have that uh, sarcastic wit, if that would fit
hmm
appropriately. I know Bill Murray does, but like you said, there's stuff that she says that her husband admonishes her about, but it's all sarcastic stuff about these other people. So you could see where that line of communication would connect between Bill Murray's character and Scarlett Johansson's.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there is a lot of like wise beyond her years in terms of how people are, and I think some of that is in her backstory of being a philosophy major in college. Because you got to kind of
There's a lot of money in that. What did he tell her? There's a lot
oh
of
yeah,
dollars in that or
there's a lot of
something.
cash in that, and then I like too
There's
like
just some great Bill Murray moments in this movie. I know we're talking about all the sort of romantic side of it, but if you're a Bill Murray fan, he's got some great
oh
just
yeah,
Bill
oh
Murray being Bill Murray moments.
just kills it. I mean, there's a reason that this movie got up for a bunch of awards because it definitely did. It won an Oscar for the screenplay. Sofia
Which
Coppola.
is a little bit surprising to me because a lot of it was ad-libbed.
It was, although I did see an interview with Scarlett Johansson saying there was a lot of stuff that was written. It was
Okay.
mostly kind of the comedic stuff. They would let them riff a little bit. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was nominated for Best Picture. Didn't win that. It was nominated for Bill Murray was nominated for Best Actor. He didn't win.
Yes.
Sofia Coppola was nominated for the screenplay and for directing. And apparently, And this is both impressive for her and kind of sad that it took until the 2004 Oscars. She was the first woman to be nominated for writing, directing, and Best Picture in the same
Wow.
year.
Wow. Yeah, that
So
that does speak volumes to the history of Hollywood, but
it does, but at the same
fortunately,
time,
we've come a long way since then. So
we have, and like good for her, right? Because
right.
this was her second feature film. She had done The Virgin Suicides before this.
I don't know. I mean, and she does a great job. I'm not trying to say anything negative about her, but when your dad's Francis Ford Coppola, you're gonna have some stuff open up to you that a
Certainly.
lot of other people are not gonna have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know
Again, I
what?
don't want to take anything away from this movie or anything that she's done, but that's a nice resource to have in your corner.
It absolutely is, and I bet you she would be the first one to tell you that.
Yeah, I'm
Honestly,
sure.
like I don't think because even like Nick Cage, who I talk about all the time on this show. He was a cousin, nephew of Francis Ford Coppola, but he
Yeah.
changed his stage name in part so that he wouldn't get that associated with him, but it
Yes.
still helped open doors for him,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
he knows that. Like that's the thing is I think the folks in Hollywood that understand that they have that advantage. Um, there are some that do, some that don't, some that think that they did it solely based on their
Right.
own merits,
Those
and
are
it's
the
like,
ones
well,
that sort of get on your nerves, right?
yeah,
"Oh, I just did this on my own." And no, you got a little help there.
because the thing with it is like this was her second feature film, and she went on, she's been directing ever since, as recently as Priscilla in 2023. Nothing has ever really kind of hit, this almost feels like the peak in terms of popularity and sort of critical acclaim, but everything she's done has been met with good, decent,
Right,
nothing
right.
really terrible. um it just kind of feels
I
like
wonder,
she
does that Oh,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, I wonder if maybe this was such a high point because I'd read that she drew a lot from her own life
Hmm.
into
Yeah.
this movie. So maybe that passion that she wanted to tell the story, maybe I'm just reaching for things. Maybe that elevated her process, as it were.
It's entirely possible. She also, I did see an interview with her talking about how this movie taught her to follow her instincts more, because she said in projects she would do before this, she would always be kind of like, well, why do I want to do that? Or why am I thinking this way? And this sort of told her, no, go with the initial gut instinct because it's going to
Yeah,
work. And that's what she did here. So I think making it semi autobiographical in terms of like tone probably helped.
yeah. It's an amazing movie. I mean, it really was.
Yeah. And again, talking about sort of how it was shot, her dad told her that she should be shooting it in high def like video because it's the future, but she
Right,
wanted film. She said film feels more romantic. And I think in this case, especially 2003, digital wasn't where it is now.
right.
It
Yeah,
looked
it would
like
have
digital.
looked. Yeah, it would have looked. Yeah, very, very clean.
Yeah, even though like there are moments in this, she shot a lot of, I was reading like high speed film stocks and things to kind of give it that almost home movie feel, just sort of elevated, like a polished version of that.
Right.
Um, so, and I think again, using a lot of the natural lighting and a lot of the natural evening light stuff like that helped it as well. But
Yeah, it gives it just a really unique look. Like I said, it feels dreamlike in spots.
mhm, yeah. Um, I did find it funny that the character of John is loosely based on Spike Jones,
Yeah, I
uh,
read that as well. He
and
apparently did not care for that.
he didn't a whole lot. And then,
Which I
but
don't know why. I don't think John is that horrible of a character.
no, I don't think he is. But I think at the same time, like you just don't want to be thought of as that guy either because
Yeah.
he's not great. He's not terrible. But I do think it's funny that several years later he made Her with Scarlett
Yes.
Johansson, which
With
is kind
Scarlett.
of another, I don't want to say version of this. It's more of a sort of almost a spiritual successor. It's kind
Yeah,
of that same type of movie. So,
exactly. A
um,
side quill.
yeah. So I thought that was interesting. I also, This movie can show you how a budget doesn't necessarily matter for the quality of a movie, right? A low budget movie can look and be really good. This was
Yes.
made for $4 million. Four.
And it went on to make what, over 100 million, didn't it?
119 worldwide, which
Yeah,
is,
that's amazing.
and again, these are
That is amazing.
2004, 2003 numbers where that was still $100 million was still a real big movie.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, but again, on 4 million. So it's like, it's not just that it made over 100 million, is that they didn't spend a whole lot on it. It's amazing that happened.
Yes.
And
Yes. And I wish Hollywood would take that lesson. I know last year one of the big hits was Godzilla -1, and the budget on that was very low. And as a movie fan, you kind of point at it like, look, they can do that with that little amount of money. You should be able to do that with as much of these budgets, these $300 million budgets that are just god awful when you go watch them. So yeah,
and
again, that's good instincts on her part, or Sofia Coppola's parts, because the way she filmed it, and the like you said, sticking with film instead of digital, and
yeah.
using the natural lighting and all that. So yeah, that's good instinct. Plus, you have an iconic role or performance from Bill Murray. As you
Mhm.
mentioned, he never had like that downward slide, but he's always, if you are, especially if you're a certain age, Bill Murray's just always kind of been in your movie going experience. So
Yep.
when you get a really good Bill Murray a performance, that tends to draw a lot of people.
Well, and it shows too that a movie can be effective and get you to feel something, because art should make you feel something, right? That's the whole point of it.
Yes.
And you can
Yeah.
do that without having to spend a ton of money. You can make a movie that has a lot going on. Not every movie. I'm fine with uh larger budget action extravaganzas. I just saw Furiosa. That was a big budget thing, action wall to wall. Um it's just a different type of movie. But
Right.
I want to
Yes,
see,
it's definitely not lost in translation.
yeah, but like I want to see this type of thing. I want to see these kinds of movies still get made and but not just get made, get seen. And that's part of what's tough in today's landscape, is like, this is a movie that if it were made today might get in the theaters. It might end up going straight to a streaming service.
Right,
Um,
where it might get a few views
yeah.
and then disappear.
And that's the hard part, because like, I think movies like these need to exist. I talked about this with Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is just a bonkers movie,
Yes, it
higher
is.
higher budget, but like really weird. But I'm so glad that got recognition, and people saw it, or some people saw it anyway. Because I think movies like that should exist. I think movies like this still need to be made, because I want that balance. I want to see Furiosa, which is all about action and telling the
Right,
story
right.
through the
And I
action
can
and through
turn my
those
brain
visuals.
way down on and just
Mhm.
enjoy it for that. But also, yeah, I wanna see characters that are well developed and well acted, and a film that's well shot or taken a different direction than just your standard
Mhm. 'Cause this is
big budget.
it's a romance, and there's a lot of dialogue in it, but quite honestly, there's a lot that goes on in this that is visual storytelling, that is us interpreting from facial
Right,
expressions and, simple things like having a character that is central to the scene that's going on, but they're out of focus and we're focused on someone else. So,
right.
we get that feeling of not being a part of it. Like all that
Yeah,
kind of
it's
stuff.
nice to not be spoon-fed what emotion you're supposed to feel. The movie allows you to figure out what's hitting with you. Like I said, for me, I see things differently than you're gonna see the movie, because
Mhm.
we're different places in our life, so I'm gonna take a different opinion of this,
Yeah.
and it's nice to have a movie like that. It isn't just saying, "Okay, this is they fall in love, and then they're gonna fight, and then they get back together," the generic kinda stuff. So, yeah, like I said, this type of movie needs to be around more and more.
That was another thing that this movie did that I loved, was we had the kind of tropey moment of they have an issue. Um,
Yes.
you know, he
Oh,
we
I
get
hate
Bob.
yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, I'm
I
sorry.
mean I mean
I have
Bob
issues.
Bob ends up at the hotel bar, and he's sitting there drinking, and he's all down on himself, and Charlotte's been gone. She was out, right? I think this is when she was at that temple.
Yes. Yes.
And so
Because she
like,
rode the bullet train out.
yeah, she rides the bullet train out to, I think, Kyoto or something, and sees, I want to say it was a wedding going on, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's where
Um,
it was at.
and she is really just having this wonderful experience and feeling something. So it's bookending what she went through at the beginning of the movie, where she went into that Buddhist temple and should have been feeling something and just wasn't. Now she's here, but because of what's gone on for the last few days, she's able to see it more for what it is. And she doesn't get to experience that together with Bob. And Bob has had the phone conversation with his wife. He's reeled down, drinking a bit. The redheaded lounge singer comes over. They start talking, and then we just cut to him waking up the next morning, um, with her in his room. And that's a tropey thing that romance and romantic comedies and all those
Yep.
do, right? Drama, whatever you want to call it. And of course, that's when Charlotte's going to show up at the door to be like, "Hey, let's go get some food." And it could have been handled completely differently. And I like the way the movie did it, because they still go and get food. There is still the tension, but it never gets to the point of melodrama. It
Right.
feels realistic.
I will give it credit for that. I just didn't like that moment in the movie. I didn't like him going with the lounge singer.
I
Especially at that place in the movie, I just because well, really, you had that at the very beginning. That really great scene where they send the I'm assuming she's a call girl up to
Yeah.
the studio, and he has that, and he basically is just trying to get her out of the room as quickly as possible because he doesn't want to have anything to do with that. And so to have him do that with that lounge singer, I get why in the movie he did it. Just to me, it was like I don't really think the movie needed that. I think there was enough adversity in their quote unquote relationship that they didn't really need that.
I mean, that's perfectly fair. What I did like about it was just the fact that, like, he was in a weak moment and not in his right mind, and so he makes the poor decision and doesn't even realize it until the next morning. And now he, like, because when he wakes up immediately, you can see on his face of, what the hell have I done? What's going?
Yeah.
Oh no! Why did I do that?
Isn't there like a moment where he first wakes up and he's alone in the bed? He kind of has a moment of relief where
Yes.
he's like, oh, and then he sees the two glasses and he's like, oh shit.
Yep. Exactly. And that's when he realizes it. And the way then that the next scene goes, where they go out to the shabu shabu place, and which again has that great moment where she's looking at the menu and she's like, "I don't know
Yeah,
what the
I
difference is here,"
don't know
and it's
what
just
this
the
is.
same picture six times with six different
Yeah.
prices, which cracked me up. And he just picks one and says, "2 of those."
Yeah, he just put this finger. That's good.
um, but they have their tension moment of, like, they're angry with each other, but again, it never becomes a blown out
Yes.
melodrama, and we don't have to have this huge will they won't they. She's sort of like, "No, look, I'm happy for you. She's closer to your age. You guys can talk about, growing up in the 50s, that kind of stuff." So there's that
Yeah.
sarcastic wit that the two of them
Right.
have.
Yeah.
And he
Like I
kind of
said, I agree with you with that. It doesn't go for that typical where you think it's gonna go. When I first saw it, I was like, okay, this is gonna be the argument moment,
Yep.
and they're gonna not talk for 2 days and blah blah blah. But to her credit, Coppola did not do that. It just like I said, it just felt I don't know. I don't know. It just didn't feel right in the
Well,
moment for me.
and I think it's not supposed to. I think that's by design. Because Coppola's subverting expectations a few different times in this movie, that being one of them, where setting you up for what the tropey moment is, but then not quite going where you think.
Yeah.
But I agree. I agree with you that it doesn't feel right and it feels uncomfortable. And I think that was the point. And then to take it and kind of pull the rug from us a little bit on that and be like, well, but I mean,
It
at
didn't
the end,
really
it's going to
amount
be
to
okay.
anything. Yeah.
hmm But they did the same thing with, like, the tropey thing earlier in the movie, is for them to have that wonderful night where they go out and they have that connection. They're running through the streets. They go into that, like, little casino, all the slot
Yeah.
machines at one
Yeah.
point, and they're running away from people, and then they find their friends again and they're riding around, and then we see them riding back in the taxi where she's awake and he's crashed out in the cab, and then we just cut to him carrying her through the hotel. And so she's crashed out now. And like, again, the trope thing would be for them to then have that moment of physical intimacy.
Right.
And instead that gets subverted because he gets her home, gets her back to the hotel room safely, and then leaves to go talk to his wife.
Yeah.
Without
That's sort of why that scene with the singer kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because he,
Mhm.
up until that point, he had been very well, like you said, he was at a down point at that moment in the movie, but he had sort of had a moral compass at that point to where he wasn't going to do that stuff.
and
And I get it.
maybe
Like I said, in the context of the movie, I get it
Mhm.
and I understand it. I just, like I said, it was just like, really,
Yeah.
we didn't really need that.
No, I can see that. I can because it doesn't become a big thing, it sort of ultimately feels like it's not important. And
Yeah,
in a way it isn't, but that's kind of the whole movie, right? The whole
right.
thing is sort of none of this is like earth-shattering, life-changing moments,
Right.
but it's also life-changing stuff going on.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
um and then I love the way this movie ends. I really really love the whole ending to this where they've had that moment and then there's the fire alarm later, right? Or whatever that is
Yeah.
that gets them out of their rooms.
And they sort
Um
of reconnect again.
mhm. Yeah. They kind of have that moment where they can be like, "All right, I was kind of dumb. We were both kind of
Yeah.
dumb. Like, can we just get over that and enjoy this moment, these
Yes.
moments together?" Um knowing full well he's leaving the next day and basically he doesn't want it to end on bad terms. She doesn't either because while they know they're probably never going to see each other again, um, or really probably ever talk again, like to leave it that way would have been bad. So I like that, and then how just crestfallen he is the next morning that he doesn't get that one last moment to see her,
Right.
which again we're looking for. And the Hollywood trope is like, but at the last minute they're going to see each other and run into each other's arms and it'll be happily ever after, and we don't get that. We get her bringing him his jacket.
Yes. And then you sort of get that moment, but it doesn't end like you said, the normal Hollywood way.
Yeah.
It's
um
it's more him just whispering whatever he whispers, but he does chase down the street after her to have
he
that one last
does,
goodbye.
because the way it ended in the lobby was very cold. And for him, he sees her and he's got to have that one last moment, so he does chase her down the street and finds her, and it's just they embrace. It's a big hug, and then he whispers something in her ear. Now, apparently there was nothing in the script about that. It's just,
Yes.
and even the subtitles I think just say whispers softly. Um, some people did try to enhance the audio, and I did listen to it with my
I read
headphones
that.
on.
Yeah, did you hear anything? I read that they enhanced it, and I watched the scene again, and I was like, "I don't know how you could get anything out of that," but
It
did you get anything out of it?
so the hard part is that I listened to it and then I read about it and then I listened to it again, and therein lies the issue because now I've been
In
informed
your
what I
head.
should be hearing, and that's what I'm going to hear.
Uh,
Um, but it does sound a little bit like he starts it with "Promise me," and what people are saying was the next thing that you do is go up to that man and tell him the truth. I think I can see something along those lines of just like, promise me you're going to take what we had these last few days and incorporate that into your life and just be who you are, kind of thing.
yeah.
Um, but I like that we don't know exactly what
I
was said
love
there.
that we don't know. To me, as an audience member, because this is you're following their emotional journey with each other, and
Hmm.
you've seen all of this emotional connection, the intimacy that they've had with each other, and then there's this one tiny moment in the movie where you're not allowed to know
Yep.
what that moment is. So I like that. I really like that. It just acknowledges and says, no, you don't get to know. This is between these two characters.
Yep. Yeah, I love ambiguous endings when they're done well. This one, even something like the end of Inception with the
Yeah, the
totem,
spinning
whether it
top.
falls
Yeah.
or not, like that kind of stuff is always interesting to me because I like again, just like how I feel like art should make you feel something, whether you like that feeling or not, it should invoke some kind of an emotion to you. I think it's also really good when it is open to interpretation. When an artist creates something and puts it out there, and people can then take it with wherever they are in their life, and it may change and be different times. Like if you had seen this when you were in your 20s, how differently it would have hit than it does now.
Yes. Yeah, I probably would have connected more with her character than with
Hmm.
Bill Murray's.
Yeah, I definitely would have connected more with her character if I'd seen this in 2003.
Yeah, especially
Um,
coming out of college and not knowing what the hell I wanted to do. I can
yeah.
relate to that very well
Oh
with a
yeah.
major that isn't gonna help you at all.
Yep. But I love that, and it's that moment we get all the emotional beats in that moment between the two of them, and they end it with a smile, and like he's smiling and he's happy as he leaves, knowing
Yes,
this thing that they had is over, and he's going back to his life, but he's going back to his life now armed with just something new. And she's doing the
right.
same thing. And the last shot of her walking away and the smile starting to creep on her face. Just brilliant. What wonderful way
Yeah,
to finish things. So
I agree. I agree.
absolutely love that. It's not a movie with a lot of like it's funny because there's a lot of quips and wit in here, but it wasn't like just lines a minute that I wanted to capture necessarily, but I did capture a few clips that I did kind of want to talk about because some of them are really good. This first one, as somebody who has no biological children of my own, but I have been a dad, um, I can I can relate to this line, and this was one we brought up earlier, but I'm sure you can too, from Bill Murray.
It gets a whole lot more complicated when you have kids.
Boy, does it ever! Kids
Oh, yes.
complicate everything.
Yes.
I was a part
But
time
he
dad
also
for a
says that
while.
yeah, he also says it's great.
Yeah,
I don't want anybody listening who hasn't seen the movie think he's like pessimistic about being a father, but he says it's just scary and it changes everything, but it's worth
and
it, and he
and
thinks
it's
highly of
what
his kid.
yeah, that's what makes him relatable and likable is like he acknowledges it's not easy, but it also is and it is life-changing in both like things are never going to be the same, but also things are never going to be the same and that's a good thing. Like it just feels like real experience in a movie instead of just part of it.
Yeah.
A lot of times characters get written and they have part of the experience in order to get the emotion that you want for the scene. This feels like an actual three-dimensional person.
Yes. Yes, that has dealt with all of that fun change in your life that
Mhm.
someone in Charlotte's position either doesn't know about or maybe has a romanticized version of what it's going to be.
Yeah. Yep. Um, we talked about it already, but just Bill Murray being Bill Murray. The stuff in the hospital killed me when
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
he wheels her into the hospital in a wheelchair. They go up to the front desk, and the man at the front desk just starts talking, and they have no clue what he's saying at all. And this reaction was perfect.
So, we're not going to another hospital, so whatever you say is okay.
We're not going to another hospital. And then later on, when she's in talking to the doctor and looking at the X-rays of her toe, and he's just sitting outside the room with that little old
That old.
man.
I read where that was all improv, and that was not even an actor. They were just sitting there. That's why I think there's two ladies behind them just
Oh,
laughing at everything they're doing, and I was dying.
they were they were killing me. The two ladies sitting behind them trying to hold it together so much. And then yeah, I read afterwards that it's all ad-libbed and that was legit. They were just trying to hold together. That made it even better. It was
Yes.
so good. Um okay. So one of the other things about this is like the characters around them, John, Kelly, the actor, uh, Charlie Brown, they're all kind of like just surface level, very vapid, very there's not the depth to them intellectually that Charlotte and Bob have. And that was really brought out when Charlotte's walking by and she stumbles on the press conference for whatever movie Kelly was making.
Yes.
And we get her talking about working with Keanu Reeves. and I just love this.
So, and we both have 2 dogs, and we both live in LA, so we have all these different things in common.
Yeah, all these different things, like liking Mexican food.
Yes.
The most surface level, boring stuff to have in common with somebody
And
else.
I give Anna Faris credit. She plays that role very well.
Oh, it's perfect. Absolutely perfect in it. I so when they kind of have their first like meeting, before they sat down next to each other in the bar, when she sees him in the bar after the photo shoot, right? He's still in the tuxedo, but he's got the tie undone. I absolutely loved when he turns around to walk away and all those clips are still in the back of the jacket,
Yes.
holding it tight. That killed me. But then when she mentions that later, I just liked,
You were very dashing. I like the mascara.
like, she's just poking fun at him for having that all made up. That was great.
And that was one of the things, like we mentioned earlier, that made their connection so good. Because if she'd have said that to her husband, he'd have been like, "Why you gotta be so negative?" Whereas
Mhm.
Bill Murray picks up the joke.
Yep. Same scene. This is her and the music guy talking. So at this point, she's kind of given up on the conversation between John and Kelly because she's just not a part of it. The whole anorexic, which we've
I'm
all
not
known.
anorexic.
We've all known that person that latches on to a word that they don't actually know what it means. That they sort of kind of like.
No.
Kelly knows that being anorexic has something to do with food and being skinny, but she doesn't quite get what it is.
Yes. And doesn't she say her dad was anorexic or
Yeah.
something? Oh my god.
Yeah, it just made no sense at all. But Charlotte eventually gives up on that conversation because the other dude just starts talking to her, and I just loved he's going on about music and beats and producing and all this, and then he says to her,
You know what I'm saying?
No.
just her honesty in that moment. I
know
loved
it.
it. Just no.
She was great in this movie. I mean,
Oh, so good.
I love Scarlett anyway, but yeah, to be 17 and give this performance, I'm surprised she wasn't nominated.
She really should have been. She
Yeah.
should have at least gotten on the short list for nominations
And
because
she carries a lot of the movie.
she
Because
does.
as much as Bill Murray is sort of the big star in the movie, there's a lot of it is just Scarlett and dealing with her stuff.
Really, really is. And to be 17 making this, and I had seen her. I can't remember what I had seen her in around this time, but I knew who she was. And I think the next year she was in The Island. I want to say that was like 04, 05,
Okay.
which I loved. It's a silly Michael Bay action movie, but
Yeah, underrated, very underrated.
yeah, no. But yeah, you can see. Oh, it was Ghost World is what she did before this.
Yes. All right.
And it's another one where she's just fantastic in it. So like you could see the acting ability she has in these movies. So yeah, I enjoyed that. This one's just Sleep. I don't remember what that is. So here we go.
You sleep 1/3 of your life. That knocks off 8 years of marriage right there. So you're down to 16 and change. And
That was a great conversation.
Yes,
Oh,
it was.
Just
Bill Murray. Never change, Bill Murray. I don't care what they say about you. Never change.
no, absolutely. When he's at the photo shoot and he's like, yeah, this isn't whiskey, this is iced tea and all of that. And the guy's trying to give him direction and it's just terrible, right? That photographer, language barrier aside, and the whole the accent and him trying to figure out exactly what he's saying aside, like what he's telling him is just terrible direction for this photo shoot.
It makes no sense.
Makes no sense, and there's no emotion to it. But I just love.
More mysterious, yeah. I'll just try to think, where the hell's the whiskey?
It was just fantastic. That whole scene is just you just laugh throughout the whole thing, and he
like
just keeps going more and more.
The video scene that he does is really great too.
I also like that they have the Roger Moore, Sean Connery joke in there, where they're telling him, and he's like, "I'm more of a Sean Connery fan." Two things about that joke that I found hilarious. Number one is that Sean Connery actually did ads for Suntory whiskey at one point. That's pretty good. And when the two of them are walking back into the hotel, and they see Kelly singing in the lounge, and she's singing
Yes.
"Nobody Does It Better" from is it For Your Eyes Only?
Your Eyes Only, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's great. Those are
I just I
nice,
love one of those two
like
anyway.
subtle bits that
Yes.
that just make the jokes even better. So I
Yeah.
loved that.
Yeah. A little movie fan in joke there.
Yep. And then last one I had was it's just right at the end, and it's Bob can't help but make a joke, even in a moment where he's all bummed out and downtrodden, and he's called up to Charlotte's room about his jacket.
I guess goodbye and enjoy my jacket, which you stole from me.
Goodbye and enjoy my jacket, which you stole. So good.
Ah, Bill Murray. God, that dry sense of humor.
And his deliveries are just perfect, just top notch all the time. No, this is a great choice of a movie. I'm so glad that I finally got to see it, and I can say that I have, because I've heard people talk about it a lot, and some people that were really surprised I hadn't seen it. So that's great. I'm also glad you got to see it.
Yeah.
We get to check that
And
off your
I
list.
think yes, and at this point in my life, I think it hit a whole lot better than it would have if I'd have watched this, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, does it feel like one of those where it's like, I'd appreciated it back then, but like now
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
just latch
I
onto
would
it
have
more.
liked to perform it just as a movie fan in general. I would have
Mhm.
enjoyed the movie for what it is, but yeah, it wouldn't have had that same emotional connection.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of movies, is like we are never the same person every time we see a movie or when we see a movie. So my big one recently was I've been on a kick of watching a lot of David Lynch projects.
Okay.
And I know that younger me wouldn't have appreciated those the same way that I do now. And it's kind of good that I waited to see some of that, because a couple of the things I even did that with Ryan Johnson, who has become a director that I love to watch his projects. When I first saw Brick,
That makes one of us.
so the first time I saw Brick, I didn't get it. It didn't connect with me. Some of that was it kind of got really, really hyped by a couple of people that were sort of the like, sit down and watch this, you got to see this, and I just wasn't ready for it. But as it's gone on, I've gotten more and more into just what Ryan Johnson does, which is to set you up and subvert your expectations, but then subvert the subversion of your expectations. I'm into that. So I take it you're not
Yeah.
a Knives Out fan?
No,
Oh.
sir. No, sir.
That's okay.
We don't have enough time. We've already gone an hour. We don't want to go another hour and a half, 2 hours. But it's funny that you say that, because there's a movie that I watched a couple years ago that came out, and it was one of those movies that hit me at the right time. But I hardly ever do this. But when the movie was over and the credits were, I just sat in the movie theater processing, and it stuck with me even to this day when I watch it. But the Banshees of Inisherin.
Oh yeah.
That movie, I don't know. It had to be that moment in time in my life where what the message it gave me, where I just sat there and I was like, I need to think about this movie, and it was great. And ever since then, I watch it. I'm like, I love it.
Yeah. And Martin McDonagh is another one of those that he makes a movie that does make you feel something and think about
Yes.
things.
And
Have you
I
seen?
felt that after this movie, I kind of had that same feeling. I was like, yeah, I really got to think about this movie as I'm sitting here, and it's great. Like you said, after you watch something, the big Furiosa or whatever, the big Hollywood movies, and you're just turning your brain way down. It's just nice to actually have to engage in these movies and
Yeah.
feel something.
It's nice to have a movie where you got to kind of lean in a little bit and sort of get a little
Yeah.
bit closer to the screen and kind of take it in. There's sort of
But it never gets pretentious about it. You know what I mean? It never does that.
right. Yes, which can easily be done, but I think that's a testament to good filmmaking, where it can make you do that and it doesn't have to be pretentious about it. So I didn't really think about that at the time, but you're right, it doesn't get that way. And that's where like Ryan Johnson stuff can feel that way. So I can understand why some people don't like that. So I get it.
I'm just going to remain silent for the moment.
You know what? Give it a couple of
because you have
years.
been so gracious. I don't want to offend.
Do this for me. You don't have to, but give it a few years and then maybe revisit something of his and just see if it hits differently. at a different point in your life. You never know. Because again,
You're
like
right.
that did that for me with I can't remember which
I liked
Lynch
Looper.
film.
I'll give Looper credit.
Yeah.
I like that movie.
I'm also like I'm a huge murder mystery fan. In
Yeah.
general. And so being a big fan of murder mysteries and Agatha Christie and Sherlock Holmes and all that kind of stuff and
Right.
understanding the tropes involved in them is part of what I liked about his deconstruction of murder mysteries, because instead of doing it, it's sort of like if you took Clue or Murder by Death and took the zaniness out of it, but kept the comedy. That's sort of what he did with the Knives Out movies, which is why I can't wait. He just announced another one, but
Yes,
anyway,
they're making another one
we won't
that
go
I
too
will
far
not
down
be
the Ryan
seeing.
Johnson. That's fine. That's fine.
So no matter how many messages you send me about coming on and talking about it, I will never ever do it.
Fair enough. I know what not to suggest for the next time, because we'll definitely do this again. This was fun, and
Yes,
and we'll
yes.
have you back. Now, you, as the movie psycho, you're on a show.
Yes, I am on a podcast entitled Just Go Watch. And we mostly do the big brain dead movie releases every week. It's me and my co-hosts Deej and Hatch. They are my they are some Brits obviously from England, and I'm the American who takes most of the verbal abuse throughout the show.
Fair
But
enough.
we do our reviews in our own unique way. We always take the review serious. We might not take each other very seriously, and we have some fun with that. But it's a very entertaining 45 minutes to an hour a day or an hour a week that like we try to do, like we just did Furiosa, and we give you a rating and tell you if you should just go watch.
Excellent.
And you can find us on Instagram or Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Just Go Watch Pod. So come on, give us a listen. I will say we do use some spicy language, so I hope you don't offend easy if you want to come listen.
Not a problem. Just go watch. Check it out. Instagram, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. I'm still calling it Twitter. I don't care.
Yeah, me too. We're
Just
on all
go
the
watch.
podcast services, so
Excellent. Definitely check it out. That's great. Well, Chris, thanks so much for being here this week. This was a lot of fun.
Travis, thank you so much for sticking with me. And like I said, you have the patience of Job to get me on your show. I love coming on your show. Any other time will be great. So whatever you want to suggest, just send me a message. It might take me a while to get back to you, but you're used to that now. So
That's fine. Now I know I can plan for it. So it's all
Yeah.
good. No, thank you so much. This show I record live Sunday nights, typically 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can watch it live at twitch.tv/tvstravis or youtube.com/@tvstravis. And then it comes out on Wednesdays, anywhere you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. If you want it a few days earlier in a podcast form, you can join the Patreon, patreon.com/WYHS. As little as $1 an episode, you get the episodes a few days early. And there's also things like monthly movie nights that I do on my Discord. You can find all of that at tvstravis.com, including links to merchandise and other podcasts that I do. I do a few other shows as well. So tvstravis.com, check those out. But next week, I've got a fun movie in store, and you'll just have to wait and find out what that is as we move through
Teasing
the
us.
summer. Yeah.
Tease me.
I have to sometimes. Got to bring them back.
I'll definitely be coming back for that one then.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. Love that. And until next time, just remember to enjoy your movies and let's be excellent to each other. All right. This has been Wait, You Haven't Seen.
Am I drinking?
Yeah.
As soon as I'm done.
As soon as I'm done.
As soon as I'm done.